Good evening and welcome to Tete the Opera Festival, broadcasting live from the Cockpit Theatre on Cockpit Broadcasting. My name is Bill Banks Jones, Artistic Director of Tete and Programmer of the festival. Just a couple of things to say to you before we start this interactive broadcast. The first is how the interaction works. We will play you Paradise Lost and then invite the panelists, the composer, pianist, and singer, Geoff and Larry, Geoff Page and Lawrence Zazzo, into the room to have a bit of a chat about what you've just seen. The and how you ask questions, how you interact, is by typing whatever you like in the chat, and that gets passed on to me, and I will pass it on to them. So any questions you have about the performance, type in there. A couple of other things to say are first that, like everybody, we've had a hell of a year, and the artists in the whole of Tete the Opera Festival have been on every single company, the most extraordinary roller coaster. As can we, can't we, what can we do, what can't we do, will we be able to? It has been extraordinary. But we got here and we did this show to a live audience on Saturday night, and it was phenomenal. Really, really happy to be able to share that with you now, because there's nothing like the interaction of performers and audiences. The other thing to say about that is that just as we worked with the DCMS to do a pilot performance for the reopening of opera, so we're now working with the Paul Hamlin Foundation to keep trying to get our sector open. So we will send you questions after this broadcast, and we'd really appreciate your answers, even though it's not live. This is all part of the whole process, and understanding your story as well as ours is really important in getting the whole opera sector open. Anyway, third thing to say is, if you'd like to make a donation to the artist, we've kept the ticket price really low for this broadcast, because you can then show what you thought it was worth by typing in easydonate.org/lost, or copying and pasting it from the chat, or clicking on it in the chat, and that will take you to a donation page. Now, without further ado, let's take a look at Paradise Lost.
And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. That old serpent, called Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
is this region? Is the soil a clime? This the spirit that we must change for heaven.
Such place eternal justice had prepared for those rebellious. Here their prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set, as far removed from God and light of heaven as from the centre thrice to the utmost pole. Oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell! He walked with uneasy steps over the burning marl, till on the beach of that inflamed sea he stood and called his legions, angel forms, abject and lost under amazement of their hideous change. He called so loud that all the hollow deep of hell resounded. At which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's concave. All in a moment through the gloom was seen 10,000 banners rise into the air with orient colours waving. With them rose a forest huge of spears, and thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array of depth immeasurable. Upon the firm opacious globe of this round world, Satan alighted walks. On he fares, and to the border comes of Eden, where delicious paradise, now nearer, crowns with her enclosure green, a woody theatre of stateliest view, cedar and pine, and branching palm, goodliest trees laden with fairest fruit, blossoms and fruits at once of golden hue appeared, with gay enamelled colours mixed, on which the sun more glad impressed his beams. Gentle gales dispense native perfumes, and whisper whence they stole those balmy spoils. And of pure, now purer air meets his approach, and to the heart inspires vernal delight and joy, able to drive all sadness but despair.
How like to heaven, if not preferred, seat worthier of gods, as built with second thoughts.
The fiend saw undelighted all delight, all kind of living creatures new to sight and strange. Two, a far nobler shape, erect and tall, with native honour clad in naked majesty, seemed lords of all, and worthy seemed, for in their looks divine the image of their glorious Maker shone. For contemplation he, and valour formed, for softness she, and sweet attractive grace.
This new favourite of heaven, this man of clay, who us the more to spite, his maker raised from dust. Spite then with spite is best repaid.
Eve, sole partner and sole part of all these joys, dearer thyself than all, needs must the power that made us, and for us this ample world be infinitely good, that raised us from the dust and placed us here in all this happiness.
O thou, for whom and from whom I was formed, flesh of thy flesh, and without whom and to no end, what thou hast said is just and right. For we to him indeed all praises owe, and daily thanks.
Whither have ye led me? With what sweet compulsion thus transported to forget what hither brought us? Hate not love, no hope of paradise or hell, who here to taste of pleasure, but to pleasure to destroy, save what is in destroying. The joy to me is lost.
Adam, well may be labour still to dress this garden, still to tend plant, herb, and flower, our pleasant task enjoined. But till more hands aid us, let us divide our labours, for while so near each other thus all day, what wonder if looks intervene and smiles? Our day's work brought to little, though begun early, and the hour of supper comes unearned.
Thus saying, from her husband's hand, her hand soft, she withdrew.
Then let me not let pass occasion which now smiles. Behold alone the woman, all that known to all attempts her husband, for a view far round, not nigh, whose higher intellectual I shine, and strength of courage haughty, and of limb heroic will, of terrestrial all, nothing for me, exempt from moonlight not, so much hath hell debased, and pain and fear and need, to what I was in heaven.
Such pleasure took the serpent to behold the sweet recess of Eve, thus alone, her heavenly form angelic, but more soft and feminine, her graceful innocence, her every air of gesture. Enclosed in serpent, toward Eve the enemy of mankind addressed his way, with burnished neck of verdant gold, erect amidst his circling spires, that on the grass floated redundant. Pleasing was his shape and lovely. His tortuous train curled many a wanton wreath in sight of Eve, to lure her eye. He, glad of her attention gained, with serpent tongue organic, or impulse of vocal air, his fraudulent temptation thus began.
Resplendent Eve, sovereign mistress, if perhaps thou canst, who art sole wonder, matchless on thy looks, thy heaven of mine
Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved. But say, where grows the tree? From hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow in paradise.
And not long beyond a row of myrtles, on a flat, fast by a fountain, one small thicket past of blowing myrrh and balm. If thou accept my conduct, I can bring thee thither
Serpent, we might have spared our coming hither, fruitless to me, though fruit be here to excess. But of this tree we may not taste nor touch, God so commanded.
Indeed? Hath God then said that of the fruit of all these garden trees ye shall not eat? Yet laws declared of all in earth or air.
Of the fruit of each tree in the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of this fair tree amidst the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat thereof, nor shall ye touch it, lest ye die.
O sacred wise and wisdom giving plant, now I feel thy power within me clear, not only to discern things in their causes, but to trace the ways of highest agents, tint however wise. Do not believe those rigid threads of death. Ye shall not die. Ye shall not die. How should ye by the fruit? It gives you life to knowledge by the threatened look on me, who have touched and tasted, yet both live and life not perfect have attained than fate meant me by venturing higher than my lot. Become as they, participating godlike fool. The gods are first, and that advantage use on all belief, that all from them proceeds. I question it. For this fair earth I see, warmed by the sun, producing every kind and nothing. If they all things who enclose knowledge of good and evil, this stream that so beats, therefore free, attains wisdom without their leave, and wherein lies the offense that man should thus attain? Lord, what can your knowledge hurt him, or mystery impart against his will, if all be his? Or is it envy? And can envy dwell in heavenly breast? These, and many more causes import your of this fair fruit. God is human, reach then, and
Fixed on the fruit she gazed, which to behold might tempt alone, and in her ears the sound yet rung of his persuasive words, her rash hand in evil hour forth reaching to the fruit. She plucked, she eat. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat sighing through all her works gave signs of woe, that all was lost.
Thrones, dominations, principles, virtues, powers, for in possession of much, not only of might. I call him and declare in return successful, successful beyond hope, to lead for triumphant out of this infernal pit upon the accursed house of
said a while he stood, expecting their universal shout and high applause to fill his ear, when contrary he hears on all sides, from innumerable tongues, a dismal universal hiss, the sound of public scorn. He wondered, but not long had leisure, wondering at himself now more, his visage drawn he felt to sharp and spare, his arms clung to his ribs, his legs entwined each other, till supplanted down he fell, a monstrous serpent on his belly prone, reluctant but in vain. A greater power now ruled him, punished in the shape he sinned, according to his doom. He would have spoke, but hiss for hiss returned, with forked tongue to forked tongue, for now are all transformed alike, to serpents all as accessories to his bold riot.
Well, in the world of tete-a-tete the Opera Festival, that is one hell of a marathon. What a magnificent achievement that is. Amazing piece. Two things before we ask the artists to join us are, first, if you'd like to shower them with donations, don't forget easydonate.org/lost, which will probably magically appear in the chat again. And they really deserve that. It will go towards more work in the future, development of the piece. I'm not sure it needs developing. I think the genius of it is the scale coming out of the economy. The second thing to say is this is the interactive bit. So we absolutely are welcoming questions in chat. We're getting a huge amount of applause in the chat. But if you want to ask anything, please do. I've got a little list of questions here, but let's get Larry and Geoff to join us. If you'd like to turn yourselves on, that would be great. Hello. Oh, hooray, we've got both of you.
Hello, Bill.
So, welcome, the pair of you. Great list of questions. We put a couple more minutes on the clock here because we thought it would be really nice to find out a whole lot. The first is, how did the project come about?
How did it come about? Well, firstly, Larry and I knew each other through our wives worked together, so that's how we first got to know each other. And Larry was interested in kind of maybe me writing something, and obviously for me, I was kind of very excited at the prospect of writing something for Larry. So that was kind of how it started. How did it start from your point of view, Larry?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we just, as a lot of these things sometimes do, a conversation over a few drinks one night. You know, I'm always looking to do something different, to push myself as a singer. You know, the countertenor repertoire is exquisite, but it is limited. I sing mostly the Baroque with a little bit of classical and you know, some 20th century works, and I do feel it's very, very important to continue to push the envelope. And I felt ready for something new, and knowing that Geoff comes from that musical background and yet is also a classically trained musician. I wonder, it'd be interesting to see whether the audience picked up those influences, or to what extent Geoff feels he was what influences he was borrowing from.
Well, let us know in the chat, everybody. Next question: why Paradise Lost? Who hit on that?
I think that was me. It was. I think that the challenge of trying to think. We came up with this idea about writing a show for Larry, writing a one-person show, and it was then a question of thinking, well, what character, what story did we want to tell? And I wanted to do it as a first-person kind of delivered story rather than Larry playing a narrator or a mixture of different characters. So it's trying to find a character where the choice of the countertenor voice didn't just seem like, well, it was a countertenor voice because I was writing it for Larry, but kind of made sense in terms of the character. So we kind of thought through, I think we thought through a few different ideas, but reasonably early on hit on this idea of Paradise Lost, and particularly playing this kind of central character of Lucifer, and that somehow just really fitted with the countertenor voice, that kind of angelic, beautiful angelic tone that he's got, but then the way it kind of twists and kind of corrupts through different parts of it. So that was, I think, where we started from.
I will stick with you for a minute, Geoff. How was this then formed out of the text? It's a hell of a text to dare to set.
I think it's something like 10,000 lines worth. So we felt that if we was to deliver all of them, that would be a fairly lengthy piece. It might even challenge Wagner. But because I decided to do it just using the words of Lucifer and that one character, by the time, so the very first thing I did was went through the kind of whole text, found all those bits that were either speeches or bits of monologue, kind of soliloquy, a few bits of kind of conversation, got rid of everything else, and by then I had a much reduced kind of text to work with. And then it was a question, I think I did a couple of things. It was thinking about what were the key points in the story. I mean, it's one of those kind of narratives that everybody knows. You don't need to necessarily worry about the audience halfway through going, what's going on, what's this thing about an apple. So it's more about exploring the kind of bits around the edges of that, and the kind of obviously what Milton does so brilliantly is kind of pads out that kind of narrative with this incredible kind of insight into what might be going on behind the scenes. And then it was partly looking at the text and seeing which bits kind of spoke quite immediately. Some of it, I found as I was reading it, I was having to read it several times to try and get a sense of what it meant. And it was trying to find those bits that as soon as you read it, you thought, yeah, that really kind of grabbed my kind of excitement or interest in terms of, and because obviously by the time you overlay music and singing with that, if it's not very easy to understand, then it's going to become probably more difficult in some way. So it was trying to find those bits that really jumped out of the text in many places.
No, it was brilliantly easy to understand. I think you did such a superb job because the text is so poetic.
Yeah.
And that is usually the job of the music, but somehow you have managed to augment it. Whereas sometimes, like, no, I'm not going to quote. Well, Pelléas and Melisande say I think it's slightly diminished because the music fills in what is the job of the audience's imagination. But also the text is so rhythmic, and that must have been really interesting while you were setting it. Anyway, let's switch to Larry and ask you about your experience of doing a one-man show. How is that?
Well, vocally, it is exhausting. And especially under the current circumstances, having really kind of stopped singing for about 3 months, maybe just humming, exercising now and then, to start to come out of lockdown with this piece, which is really probably the toughest thing I've ever sung. I don't know whether the audience can tell, but a couple times when Geoff and I were rehearsing over the past few weeks, I just had to stop singing because I had no voice. I had no speaking voice, going between the baritone and the countertenor, singing basically constantly for an hour. I think the only thing you could maybe compare it to, I was saying to Geoff, is either a recital. It's kind of has that element, but even then it's so dramatic, it's so intense. As you see, I have a chance for a bit of water a couple times, but also maybe Orfeo, Gluck's Orfeo, which is about an hour and a half, in which Orfeo is on stage the entire time, but he's sharing with Euridice. It's not a one-man opera. He's sharing with the chorus. So I can't think anything that's quite like it. And this changing between voices is very tiring. And it's an issue of stamina. I don't think I could have done this, Bill, as a younger singer. Can I just say? I think I was ready to do it.
That's really interesting.
These chords have received a beating over the years, and but they're tough. They're tough, and I think I built up that stamina. And I was really ready to take on this challenge, and I find it challenging every time. He said, in Geoff's defense, this was originally about an hour and what, Geoff? Hour and 3/4? Hour and 40? And Geoff, I mean, must be terrible for a composer to cut his own work, but basically honing Milton down. And I have to say, thanks to Tête-à-Tête, I think, Bill, you gave us the limit under an hour, and a lot of pieces are kind of under a half an hour, aren't they? But I think having that as a goal helped us to really condense it into a form that I think is number one, a little bit easier for me to sing. Can you imagine me singing for an hour and 40 minutes? I don't know how I did it, Geoff. How did we get to do it? But it's so epic in scale, and condensing something that's epic, and yet actually it's a very simple story. It'd be great to hear from people in the chat what they felt in terms of length and the journey that we took them on. Was it enough? Was it too much? I don't think we should cut it anymore.
I thought it was phenomenal.
I'm very happy with it as it is.
Yeah. It's just right. There's a lovely question in the chat, which is actually I was going to talk about. Was slightly kicking myself to not somehow get you on the same night. We had the same story in a completely different situation last night in A&E. I mean, Elizabeth Dobson's question from the chat is: does Larry feel devilry comes naturally to the countertenor voice? But let me just explain to you two and anybody else listening what A&E is, because you might go and watch it as well. You'd be a brilliant double bill. A&E is set in Accident and Emergency, and it's where Eve is the doctor and Adam arrives with a mysterious problem, which happens to be that he has one too many ribs, and there is the devil character in the background of this who is played by a countertenor. But do you think countertenors are devils?
Well, I mean, we almost always we play angels a lot, don't we? Or I'm thinking of Tamerlano. I mean, we do play some bad guys. We never play the regular guy. I think that's true. I think we always play something supernatural, something strange. There's always something wrong with us or supernatural about us. And I guess the figure of Lucifer has both. I mean, I hope that you can see the angel in him as well as the devil, and I suppose that makes him a very human character, which is why I think he's the character which has fascinated readers of Paradise Lost for centuries, and is what drew William Blake to it, and a lot of the romantics that saw in this character, the kind of a proto-romantic, but also a very, very human character who hopefully I can certainly identify with.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I said to you in the theatre at the time how enjoyable it was, that particularly at the beginning when you were a lectern type thing, that it really was a bit like one of Boris's COVID press conferences, or Trump appearing, or Nixon in China, or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, these unfortunate resonances with current politics maybe never go away. I mean, I suppose it's timeless in its way. I mean, it is all about rhetoric, isn't it?
Yeah, and the art of persuasion, and you see that later as well with Eve when he's kind of talking, just the way Milton uses the language to kind of manipulate, and we taking that text and trying to kind of draw that. I mean, you do that brilliantly in the way you act it as well, just kind of that gradually drawing someone in, winning someone over with the argument, and then to the point of taking the apple. Which is...
Yeah, and Milton himself is a rhetorician. The whole piece is justifying the ways of God to man, and at the end, is the argument this huge 10,000 lines? Is it convincing? Does he convince? And in that sense, is Milton himself a bit like Lucifer with Eve, trying to convince us, trying to seduce us? Am I, as a singer, seducing the audience? To what extent is the audience implicated in that? It brings up lots of questions. These things were really going through my head. And I think what we want to do is get a director on board and take this to the next stage. And I suppose another thing I wanted to ask the people out there that listened in, what did you think? What would you like to see us do with it, I suppose? Would you like to hear it again? Maybe some people wouldn't, I suppose.
Well, you can hear it again. I need to wrap this up for now, but you can certainly communicate with us via Twitter at Tete Opera or email the website with lots of these answers. But you, audience out there now, can watch this again for another 28 days, and you can tell your friends to buy a ticket at any point in this 28 days, and you'll be really welcome. Once more, easydonate.org lost, and we better wind it up. So if you'd like to say a quick goodbye, Larry and Geoff.
Thank you all for tuning in and listening, and please tune in to all of the other operas that are in this festival. It's going on for another 10 days, Bill, is that right?
That's right.
Some fantastically
great
creative
lineup
things going on.
Yeah, some really interesting stuff.
And it's been a pleasure being part of that. This is something very, very special. So please, everyone, continue to tune in and to contribute to it.
Yeah,
well, it's been. Thank you both very much. It's been
great, and fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers. Good night. Well, see you tomorrow for more. Whoa.